Hi there, my name's Lillian Reekie, parenting strategist from the Parent Support Network. I am the mum of two adult sons. My eldest son is a naturopath, herbalist and nutritionist. My youngest son is an electrical contractor, and he was diagnosed in preschool with childhood depression, ADHD, which is attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, and ODD, which is oppositional defiant disorder. So you may or may not have heard of those things. And when he was in preschool, we really struggled with his behaviour. We struggled, his carers and educators struggled, and it was really challenging. He actually attended 5 childcare centres in our large country town, and at that time there were only 5 childcare centres, and he attended them all basically because we felt compelled to move on, because his behaviour was so inappropriate, and the carers and educators weren't handling him very well or coping with his behaviours, and the parents were complaining. So you can imagine how challenging it was for me, coming home from my teaching job, having just, successfully teaching a classroom of 25 plus kids, and then coming to pick up this child who I was struggling with. I was really struggling with dealing with his very intense and strong behaviours, and so were his educators. And I know that his educators were doing everything within their power, within their hearts to help him and to help him be happy and successful, but they just really struggled because his behaviour was so intense. Many years later, I've now learned that even though they were doing their best at that time, and I was doing my best, and my husband was doing, we were doing our very best as parents, we were doing what I now like to call a lot of upside down parenting, connecting and relationshiping. And I've over the last 20 years been educating other parents and other educators how to turn that relationshiping and the way of communicating right side up again. And I was very fortunate to have something called the Nurtured Heart approach come into my life many years ago. And I'm now an advanced trainer in that approach, and it's something I'm so passionate about. So I have a huge mission and passion to share this with everybody, but I'm really feeling like if we can start sharing this in early childhood education, so in preschools, in childcare centres, in kindies, where the kids are still in their formative years, where parents are still have some scope to be able to improve their relationships whilst they're still young, that this is where I really want to start the education. And I'm going to actually read to you today. So Mad in America is a project. They say they're about science, psychiatry and social justice. So they actually write articles, and they also have a podcast. So I have also heard the podcast on Mad in America, where they interviewed Howard Glasser, who is the founder of the Nurtured Heart approach. But this is actually a 30-page article. Now, some of you may be interested enough, dedicated enough, committed enough to read the whole 30 pages and have enough time. Some of you may not. So what I thought I would do is just read the first, I don't know, I'll see where I feel like finishing, the first, 3 pages or so. And then if you feel compelled to continue reading, that would be awesome. And the reason I want to read this is that it talks about one of my Nurtured Heart approach colleagues in the States who was a preschool teacher. And then it goes on to talk about the success that she had personally using the Nurtured Heart approach in her preschool, but then many other preschools and childcare centres across the States who have adopted this. So I'm just going to read for a little bit. Almost 5 years ago, a little guy in Kathy Child's pre-K class in Washington State tried to yank a beaded necklace from her hand. He was 3. He and another little guy both wanted the necklace, and boy, they were fighting over it. That's a typical kind of thing, isn't it? I want that, he shouted. She said she would hold it while they solved the problem, and right then he grabbed the necklace and it broke. And he looked at me. He was so mad, she says, and he hauled off and hit me. The blow wasn't anything major, only a toddler's slap. It didn't hurt. It was more that it hurt my pride. Still, he had smacked her, a violent move that in so many other circumstances, in so many other schools, would have led to some form of immediate and unequivocal punishment, likely followed by a close and potentially clinical assessment of his intensity. especially if it was followed by further bouts of acting out, especially if the child were tagged as disruptive and even disordered, which in fact my son was. But not at the North City Cooperative Preschool, a non-profit run in conjunction with nearby Shoreline Community College that incorporates the Nurtured Heart approach, or which we abbreviate as NHA. A different model for coping with challenging behaviour that Childs had just adopted and started to incorporate in her own classroom. Telling the story these years later, she knows her response wasn't perfect. Initially, she called him bad for hitting her, and she shouldn't have. She had just been trained in NHA, and she was, she says, still working it out. But Childs took a breath. Thank goodness she had one, she says. She dialed herself down. Instead of punishing him, she pointed out what he was doing right. She told the child, no, it wasn't okay to hit, but he had stopped. He was already cooling off. Look at you, she said. You were so angry a minute ago, you hit me, but now I see you taking a big breath. I see you coming back to centre, and you look like you're about to solve this problem. The boy, wanting nothing of it, told her, begged her really, to take him out into the hallway. She said no, she would handle it right here. He said, call my mum, call my mum. And I said, we can call her in a minute, but you seem to be calming down and feeling better and better. Finally, he gave up and said, okay. And to me, that was just a telling magical moment, Child says. It became one of my favourite examples of the power of the nurtured heart. Child is a director, lead teacher and parent educator at the preschool, which serves children aged 1 to 5. She also is an advanced trainer in the Nurtured Heart approach, which myself I am as well, and a parent educator with the co-op school, bringing families into the loop with an approach that asks parents and teachers alike to drop every preconceived notion that they have about what to do with troublesome behaviour. And this is something that I'm so super passionate about as well. So indeed, those who aren't familiar with the Nurtured Heart approach, and that would be most people, might hear her story and go, wait, what? No punishment for that kid? The teacher just told him to breathe and then wound up praising him. They might even be more surprised to learn that stories such as these are in fact standard operating procedure for many schools and other settings that incorporate Nurtured Heart. In a world increasingly bent on labelling children of high intensity with ADHD and other such conditions and trying to mute that intensity with drugs, Nurtured Heart takes an entirely different track. When kids act out, they're encouraged to reset, which is stand 3 in our Nurtured Heart approach. When they do something positive, they're recognised, but not with a boring, generic, what we call junk food praise, good job, well done. NHA affirmation is specific by design, pinpointing an example of generosity or kindness or courage, creativity, cooperation, or some other greatness in a manner making it likelier they'll repeat that behaviour in the future. The result, good stuff gets the energy and attention from others, negative stuff doesn't. In turn, the child's intensity gets rerouted toward the good, reinforcing the novel concept that, hey, guess what? Grown-ups might actually notice you, even lavish you with attention for something besides challenging behaviour, which I know for my son, 99% of his attention that he was getting both in preschool and childcare and even at home was around the negative. So, intensity in and of itself isn't a bad thing. It isn't a wrong thing. It isn't a cause for correction. It's something to be acknowledged, even celebrated. It just needs to be nudged in a positive direction, and there it can blossom. There it can take the hot-wired spirit that can get a lot of kids in trouble, getting a subset diagnosed and channel its energy in another direction. We're all in the same boat. We all have intensity. It's just not those kids, says Howard Glasser, creator of the Nurtured Heart approach. From his kids' perspective, my apologies, wrong page. I want to build their inner strength, he says. If a kid has strong feelings, instead of taking severe or corrective tact, say, regardless of those strong feelings, yes, you are mad at me, but here's you handling being mad really well. So it's not about making intensity and worry and strong feelings go away, he adds. Instead, it's about using them as an occasion to recognise what they're doing right. So the 3 stands are absolutely no, absolutely yes, and absolutely clear. So Glasser, while they were doing this interview, was on the phone from Arizona reflecting on the Nurtured Heart approach, which he started roughly or over a quarter of a century ago. And its reach now extends to many countries around the world. It's very extensively known in the States and Canada and the UK and Australia. We're getting there, even places like India. So its practitioners include therapists, other clinicians, teachers of various grades, school counsellors, administrators, and parents. Its philosophies and tools are being adopted in many schools across the states. And for me, it's at its best when the educators and the parents are back to back with the Nurtured Heart approach, which is what my absolute goal and aim is, and why I'm actually sharing this with you today. He realises that the message and tenets of Nurtured Heart approach represent a massive shift in thinking about schooling, about children and how to raise them, about how we regard those with intensity, about the medical model pathologising them. Instead of something to punish and squash, intensity is something to reroute and engage in positive behaviour. Instead of seeing bouts of acting out as occasions for discipline and markers potentially for diagnosis and drugging, Nurtured Heart frames them as opportunities to encourage self-regulation in a neutral manner. And that neutrality, according to those who practice it, is critical. So going back to Child's story of the little boy and the broken necklace, in a pre-NHA scenario, a teacher might have taken that child into the hallway or into another room to help them regulate and to calm them down. And from the kids' perspective, that's golden because you're getting all this juicy energy for what went wrong, Child said. Focusing instead on what's right. It is hard work, she says, but it touches my passion because that child, they call it the preschool to prison pipeline. Starting in preschool, we are telling them how awful they are, how horrible they are, how they don't belong. And I am absolutely committed to breaking that cycle. You do belong, and this is why I'm going to show you, and I'm going to show your parents. So often described as a 3-legged table, the Nurtured Heart rests on a trio of basic stands, and explains it on its website. But let me just quickly recap those for you. So there's absolutely no, stand 1, absolutely yes, stand 2, and absolutely clear, stand 3. So stand 1, absolutely no. I refuse to give my time, energy, and relationship to negative behaviour. I will not accidentally foster failure, nor will I reward problems by responding to them in animated ways. I will save my time and energy for searching for success. Absolutely yes, which is stand 2. I will relentlessly and strategically pull the child into new patterns of success. I will constantly recognise the success and achievement that children are displaying, no matter how small, and present them with clear, undeniable evidence of their value and how great they are. And the third stand, absolutely clear, is I will have clear and consistent consequences for children when a rule is being broken. Here are the rules, and here's what happens when you break a rule. So that final stand, the clear one, requires a full understanding of what those rules are in the classroom. They tend to be delineated plainly in everyday ways in terms that children will grasp and internalise. And then when the rule is broken, a non-punitive, non-emotional, non-energised consequence occurs and the child gets a reset, or like a redo, a chance to then calm themselves down, to get back to centre and to start again. This is distinct from timeouts, particularly those that are issued as flat-out punishments with no attempts to empathise other, more positive. More positive behaviours. My apologies, my pages are a bit mixed up. After all, why would a kid want to avoid any bad behaviour if it gets a rise out of the adults in the room? If it prompts a parent or teacher to drop everything and escort them into the hallway, a corner, a seat, somewhere for designated rule breakers, Glasser, who's fond of analogies and metaphors, has referred to grown-ups as children's favourite toys, a comparison he explains at length in his work. So he says we're loaded with features and we're animated, we're reactive and interactive. We also have the best remote control ever made. In addition to our ability to walk, talk, skip, dance, wax poetic, make faces, and do just about anything else under the sun, we can display a multitude of fascinating emotions and moods in virtually infinite number of combinations, subtleties, and graduations. No other toy could possibly even compete. So kids love pushing our buttons. They'll push our buttons at home. They'll push our buttons in childcare, in kindy, and they'll do almost anything to wind us up. Another metaphor is he's compared the notion of the reset to the forgiving nature of video games, which the player make a fresh start after the most disastrous of turns. As he explains, heads can literally roll in a session gone horribly, graphically, most comically wrong, and yet the person at the controls is allowed to reset. Rules are clear, rewards and consequences are obvious, resets are the norms. It's the furthest thing from punishment, he says. So game in, game on. The kid wants to be back in the game and wants to be working hard for rewards. So the article goes on to share about the very many successes using the nurtured heart approach, not only in preschool years, but basically in every home, in every interaction that we have with our children, whether we are a parent or a caregiver or an educator. So I would encourage you to continue reading this article. I'll add the link for the article for you. But even if you don't have time to read the article, I hope you've enjoyed the part that I've shared. And as I said at the intro of this video, my passion is to really bring the educators and the parents together, helping them to understand this beautiful nurtured heart dance that allows us to really focus on the things that we want to grow in our children. I know when my son was in childcare and preschool, we were all focusing, both his parents and his educators, on all the things he was doing wrong. And that's what we were giving more energy, attention, and connection to. And he got to learn, because he was a very smart little boy, he got to learn that that's how he got his favorite toy to work, and he could press the buttons. He could use the remote and press the buttons and get us to react at any given moment with bad and inappropriate behavior. And he learned that he got the juiciest connection by doing so. So we had to really flip that. We had to turn it upside down. We had to change the way that we were connecting and relationshiping with him, and focus more on the things that we wanted to grow rather than the things that were going wrong. It's a beautiful approach. I've seen it work in my parenting work that I do over many, many years, over hundreds of families who have got benefit from using the nurtured heart approach. And it is my absolute passion. If you are a childhood educator, a director of a childcare centre, somebody who works with young children, whether it be in kindy or preschool or childcare, or maybe early primary school years, I would love to be able to share this with you. It's a huge passion for me to be able to help you to not only have better relationships with the kids that you have in your care, whether they be your own children or children that you're educating, but to enjoy your day, if you're an educator, to enjoy your day and your interactions with your children, because I can imagine my son's educators and carers probably didn't enjoy their interactions with him when he was younger, because they were so negative. So I want you to enjoy being an educator, caring for children as a parent. And I want the children to be able to really see themselves as the great person they are. I want to be able to help build their inner wealth, their sense of greatness, their sense of having great self-esteem, self-worth, self-love, self-respect, of knowing that they're an amazing and incredible person. And I want to focus on those greatnesses so that one day when they're grown up and they're making decisions for themselves and maybe leaving home and getting jobs and maybe getting partners and things, I want them to carry this portfolio of greatness, that I'm enough, I'm good enough, I'm resilient, I'm kind, I'm thoughtful, I'm compassionate, I can control my emotions and feelings, I know how to reset myself when I'm feeling escalated, and all of those positive things that we want our children to be: kind, respectful, thoughtful, resourceful, etc. So thank you for listening in. If you have listened right to the end, as I said, I will add the article so you can read the rest of it. And please, I would love to have a conversation with you around this. I'm working towards putting together a pilot program that I would love to incorporate into centres around the Gold Coast and beyond. It's something that I have a huge passion for. So thank you once again for listening in, and bye for now.